The wind screamed like a wounded animal across the Kansas plains, wild and unrelenting. Driving snow sideways through the December dark, night had fallen early, swallowing the land in a bleak, silvery stillness. There was nothing but the ache of cold and the creak of wooden steps beneath a woman too frail to carry what life had laid upon her. Eleanor Hargrove tightened her thin shawl round her shoulders, the fabric unraveling like the frayed ends of her hope. In her arms, a baby no more than 10 days old whimpered softly, his small face nestled against her chest, swaddled in the last shreds of a worn wool blanket. She stumbled forward, boots dragging through thigh-deep drifts, eyes clinging to the dim silhouette of a house in the distance. A square of faint light glowed from its window. Smoke climbed the dusk sky in delicate tendrils. She whispered a prayer, not out of faith but desperation, willing it to be real. Her legs trembled with exhaustion as she mounted the porch. Her lips cracked from cold and silence. Her gloved hand hesitated above the door, then rose to knock. 3 quiet raps. Almost stolen by the wind. The door creaked open. A man stood in the threshold, tall and broad-shouldered, the snow still clinging to his coat and beard. He wore a rough flannel shirt beneath his overcoat, and his eyes gray, not unkind, but distant, lingered not on Eleanor, but on the tiny bundle in her arms. "We got nowhere to go, sir," she whispered. He didn't answer right away. He simply studied the baby, watching the rise and fall of his breath, his cheeks flushed from the cold. A pause followed, deep and slow. Then finally, in a voice quiet but resolute, he said, "Then you belong here." He stepped back, leaving the door open. No questions, no hand offered. Just turned and walked inside. She followed, and the warmth inside touched her like a stranger's kindness, unexpected, unfamiliar, but deeply welcome. The door shut behind her with a soft thud. Snowflakes melted silently against the floorboards where she stood, uncertain. The room was spare but clean. A large stone hearth glowed with firelight. A table sat with 2 chairs. A cot rested close to the flames, waiting. Everything in place, everything still. The man returned with a heavy wool blanket and laid it on the cot with quiet care. "You can sleep there," he said. "There's water in the kettle, a ladle by the stove." She nodded, lips parted to thank him, but the words didn't come. Her throat ached not just from the wind. He turned toward the door, paused, and said, "I'll be out in the barn. If the baby cries, don't worry. I hear things, even when I try not to." Then he was gone. Eleanor looked around, her eyes catching on a drawing framed above the mantel. A woman with soft eyes smiled out from the page, her hand resting gently on the shoulder of a young boy. Pencil lines captured them tenderly, the figures still and eternal. Love frozen in graphite. She laid the baby on the cot, drawing the blanket over his chest. He stirred, then settled. Her hand lingered on his small body, feeling the breath move through him. Steady and alive. For the first time in days, she didn't feel like prey. She sat beside the fire, her boots soaked, toes numb, and watched the flames. They flickered and shifted but spoke no words, only burned. Quiet, constant, like the man who had opened his door without asking who she was. The storm grew outside, but inside the silence took a different shape. Not safety, not warmth, but space, room to breathe, room to exist, and maybe, if the world allowed it, room to remain. She awoke with a dull ache in her chest, the cold having crept into her bones during the night. Snow still veiled the world. Outside, thick and endless, the fire had burned low, but in its place stood something almost tender, a fresh pot of porridge on the table, the faint steam rising like memory. She managed a few spoonfuls. Each one tasted of ash and regret. On the wall hung a small leather pouch. Inside it, a locket, worn and warm from touch. She opened it with shaking hands, revealing a faded photograph, her mother in sepia tones, eyes lined with gentleness. She held the locket and remembered Caleb Hargrove, the man who once promised her the world, with a smirk beneath a saloon awning and a gun slung low at his hip. He moved like a storm and laughed like the devil. She believed him, believed in the adventure he painted with his words and the love he placed in her hands. But that love was loaded, like the pistols he carried. Bank heists, train robberies, smoke-filled getaways whispered through. Back alleys. She never rode with him, never held a gun. But she bore his name, his child, and that was enough. When the law caught up to him, they hung him as the sun rose. The whole town watching as the trapdoor opened. She had been hidden in the back of a wagon, a prisoner to the sight of it, his legs kicking, face contorted, not brave, not peaceful. And afterward, it was as if she'd been hanged, too. The townspeople turned their backs. The church doors were locked to her. Shopkeepers closed their shutters. One woman spit at her feet and called her a widow of sin. She begged for work scrubbing floors, washing linens, but no one would have her. She wore Caleb's guilt like the coat he left behind, and that alone made her untouchable. She lived on the edge of town, in a half-rotted cabin, feeding herself and her baby on what little she could scavenge. She hauled water from a well so deep it made her dizzy. She shivered through nights with nothing but threadbare blankets and shame to keep her warm. One morning she found the baby's pacifier frozen to the crib rail. His cries were thin. She knew if she stayed, he would not live to see the thaw. So she left. Before sunrise, she packed a worn dress her mother had sewn by hand, the locket she now clutched like prayer, and a carved wooden horse she'd made from scrap. She wrapped her baby to her chest and whispered, "We go for you." Her tears had no heat left. She walked into the heart of the storm. The journey was brutal. The snow swallowed her legs. Her arms burned with the weight of her child. Her lullabies turned to sobs in her throat. But she kept moving, one foot forward, then the next. She dug a shallow trench in the snow to rest before dawn. Her breath hung in the air like smoke. When she reached the fence post, saw the chimney smoke. The golden flicker of light, she knew it was her last hope. She lifted her hand to knock. Heart thundering, whispered, "Here we can live," and let her knuckles speak. The door opened. She barely found her voice. "We got nowhere to go, sir." His eyes met hers, and instead of judgment, there was something like understanding. "Then you belong here." She awoke in a bed warmed by someone else's quilt. Morning light spilled through a lace curtain, its corners stiff with age and thyme. A bowl of hot porridge waited beside a tin cup. No words, no note, only quiet intention. The room around her held the echo of life, carvings worn smooth, drawers filled with linen, a stove that still held heat. She wandered slowly through the house that day, careful not to disturb what had been left untouched. A dresser drawer revealed a baby's blue checkered shirt, soft with time. A single button hung loose. A rabbit toy missing an eye. She did not cry. She folded it gently and returned it to its resting place. Each morning, food appeared. Cornbread with molasses, lentil, stew and pork, folded napkins, precise water levels. He never entered, never asked for thanks. But the small gestures, mittens placed near her baby's cradle, tools left ready, firewood moved closer, built something between silence and care. She began to stitch. Curtains frayed at the edge, a cradle built from crates. The hearth swept, clean. Her hands were raw from cold water, her knees stiff from kneeling. But each movement was a quiet vow. "I am here, I am trying." I remember. Wes Thatcher never asked her story. She never asked for his. Yet something passed between them in the stillness. He walked past windows with tools in hand, sometimes tipping his hat. He fixed fence posts in the dark. She saw him listening. The day her baby laughed, a single bright giggle that filled the house like sunlight. That night, she found the little blue shirt again and sat by the fire. She threaded her needle and began to sew. A lullaby slipped from her lips, cracked and half-sung. She did not see him arrive, only sense him in the doorway, arms full of kindling. He saw her face, saw the ache spill from her eyes. He said nothing, only stepped forward and added a log to the fire. The flames caught fast, warm and quiet. They danced between them, speaking all the things neither of them could say. The fire crackled in the stillness between them. Eleanor glanced up, but said nothing. Wes kept his eyes on the flames, his jaw clenched. The next morning, she found a folded cloth beside the cradle, a child's wool cap, perfectly fitted to her son's head. She never asked who had left it. Capper's favorite drink came in a plastic can, always left near the porch steps. By late February, the snow began to release its hold on the land. Green shoots dared to peek out along the path leading to the barn. Eleanor planted potatoes in a narrow trench behind the cabin. Her fingers raw from the cold soil, she patched the holes in the chicken coop's roof with bark and tar, and even coaxed the old mare, Ruth, into letting her brush out the tangles in her mane without fuss each night. The fire burned brighter, and each morning, her son's laughter grew louder, full of light. Wes remained quiet, but his hands told stories. He built a bench outside the door so Eleanor could sit in the sun and feed the baby. He repaired a cracked window pane with waxed paper to block the wind from the cradle when she sliced her hand. Peeling turnips, he said nothing, just cleaned the cut, wrapped it gently in linen, and handed her a pair of gloves. Said they were too small for his hands anyway. There were no promises spoken, no questions asked, just the quiet rhythm of two people doing what needed doing. One afternoon, Eleanor returned from the garden, her cheeks pink from the wind and dirt. Beneath her nails, she found Wes standing over the cradle, one calloused finger captured in the baby's tiny grip. The look on his face, caught between wonder and sorrow, vanished the moment he noticed her. He stepped back, cleared his throat. "He's got a strong grip," she nodded. "He does." Wes looked down, voice heavy as iron. "So did mine." They stood in that truth together. To people who'd lost more than words could carry, Eleanor picked up the child and whispered, "Thank you for the wool cap." Wes shrugged, was just sitting there. She offered a faint smile. "Well, it fits." That night, as she tucked the mended blue shirt around her baby, she whispered, "You're safe now." It wasn't a wish. It was a fact she had come to believe. Outside, Wes sat on the porch listening to the wind move through the bare trees. For the first time in 7 long winters, the cold didn't feel quite so sharp. Dusk had just begun to settle when the stranger rode in. Dust clung to his long coat, and his horse limped slightly, favoring a rear hoof. He wasn't young, not yet old, just worn the way men get when they've seen too much and carry every memory like a scar. Wes spotted him from the porch and stepped down slowly, his hand resting near but not on his gun. A quiet warning. "Horse." "Threw a shoe up north," the man called. "Been riding dry for hours." Wes gave a short nod. "Water's by the trough." The man dismounted and let his horse drink deeply. He wiped his brow with a grimy kerchief, then looked toward the house, his gaze narrowing at the sight of Eleanor cradling the baby by the kitchen window. "That your woman?" Wes said nothing. The man smiled darkly. "Saw her once in Silk Creek. Eleanor Hargrove, ain't it?" Wes's stance shifted. "You know her, not personally, just the name." "Hell, most folks west of the Kansas River do. She's the widow of Caleb Hargrove." He let the words linger like smoke from a shot not yet fired, then added, slowly, "Guess certain folks'd be mighty interested to know she's out this way. Not everyone's made peace with what her husband did." Wes took a step closer. "You do that, you won't ride far." The man raised his hands in mock surrender. "Just talking, mister. Just talking." He tipped his hat, mounted, and rode off into the deepening dark. Wes stood there long after the hoof beats faded. That night, over dinner, he didn't say a word. Eleanor noticed the silence, but didn't pry. When the baby was finally asleep and the fire had burned low, Wes turned to her, his voice quiet but sharp. "How long were you going to keep it from me?" She looked up from her stitching. "What, your name, Hargrove? Caleb Hargrove." She swallowed. "I figured you knew." "I did. I just wanted to hear it from you." She folded the baby's shirt in her lap. "I never touched a gun, never helped him rob any banks, but that name, it clung to me like rot." "You think I care about a name?" he snapped, standing now, pacing. "That man your husband rode with, the gang that slaughtered my family." "I know," she said, her voice trembling. "Do you?" His shout was ragged. "Do you know what it's like to come home to silence? To find your wife with her throat cut, your boy shot in his own crib." Tears filled her eyes. "You think I chose him?" Her voice cracked. "I was 18. He came into town with charm and lies, promising more than laundry wages and cracked windows. By the time I knew who he really was, it was too late." Wes turned away, his fists tight. "He locked me in a cabin and rode off with blood on his hands. I hated him, Wes, long before the gallows took him." He faced her again. "You should have told me." "And if I had," she asked, "you'd have turned us away." "I don't know." he admitted, breathing hard. Maybe. The fire popped once in the hush. Eleanor stood, her child warm in her arms. If you want us gone, say it now. Wes looked at her, really looked, the curve of her shoulders, the way she shielded the baby's head, the tired beneath her eyes that had nothing to do with sleep. I don't want you gone, he said. She said nothing, only settled back into the rocker and held the baby close. The wind moaned outside, but in that quiet cabin, something held them still. The next morning, the wind howled through the canyons like a wolf on the hunt. Snow whipped sideways, and the sky turned to iron. Wes was out sharpening fence posts when he saw them, 3 riders. Black coats flapping like scavenger wings, silhouettes of cold intent. He ducked back inside. Eleanor looked up immediately. They're not here for you, he said. They're here for me. She stood fast. Who old ghosts? Wes murmured. I shot a man named Reese Gallo once, their leader. I did it to stop a massacre. But I never buried the price. Her arms tightened around the baby. What do? We fight smart. Together, they moved in unspoken rhythm. She wrapped the baby in wool and tucked him beneath the floorboards beneath the hearth. An old smuggler's crawl Jack had once shown her. She kissed the infant's brow, whispered a prayer, and slid the plank shut. In the barn, Eleanor lit the lanterns. We fire the hay bales, Wes said. Smoke, confusion. I'll draw them around back. And me, you run. She stared at him. No, she said. I'm tired of running. If this is my home, I protect it. The gunshots came with the dusk. The first rider charged through the gate. Wes dropped him clean. The second circled the barn, but fell face first into the snow when a tripwire snapped his ankle. The third kicked in the barn door. Eleanor hurled the lantern. Flames erupted. Wes tackled the man in the blaze's light. The snow turned red. Wes stood bleeding. Eleanor was there, breathless, ash in her hair. You stayed, he breathed. I wasn't losing another home. He stared at her. You didn't run. I'm not just someone's widow, she whispered. I'm someone's mother. Maybe someone's something more, later, inside. She cleaned the wound across his ribs with boiled water, tore linen from her own underskirt, wrapped him gently. Her fingers trembled, but she never paused. Wes watched her, chest heavy. No one had touched him like that since the day his wife died. Snow fell outside, but inside, something new had taken root. The last frost came late. Wes hammered a new crossbeam into place. Uneven boards, but they held. Across the yard, Eleanor pinned a small blue shirt to the clothesline. The boy toddled at her side, his little legs chasing Wes's shadow wherever it went. Wes had noticed, he just never said it, until that morning. While mending a stirrup, he heard it, pa, soft, clear, like thunder. He froze. Eleanor had stood frozen, too, then gathered the child and gone inside. That night, Wes returned to the cabin with 2 things, a box of kindling and a tiny pair of leather boots. He placed the kindling in the bin. Then, without a word, he set the boots by the hearth between his worn pair and Eleanor's muddy ones. He said nothing. Eleanor looked up, then down. The silence between them brimmed with things unsaid but understood. Later, after the baby was asleep, she crossed to the boots, ran her fingers over the seams. The stitches, every one a promise, every gesture a silent vow. She turned. Wes stood in the doorway, watching her. Still, no words. Still, everything said. Spring came slow. But it came. Violets bloomed along the fence. Eleanor moved in the window, sunlight catching her face. Wes watched from the field, feeling something. He hadn't dared believe in peace. Later, as Eleanor packed linens in a bag, she paused near the shed. Wes walked up slowly, a bundle in hand. You leaving? She turned. Thought maybe I should give you back your space. What if I don't want it back? He unwrapped the bundle. A silver ring, worn but polished. I can't change what brought us here, he said, but I'd be proud if you stayed. She closed his fingers around the ring. Then this is home. Behind them, the boy stumbled into the dirt, laughing. Look, Mama. He called in. Baby, speak. We home. She smiled, took Wes's hand. Yes, she said, we are. And no one spoke Caleb Hargreaves' name again. Not because it was forgotten, but because it no longer mattered. On this quiet Kansas land, Only the new seeds mattered. The hands held, the boots by the fire, the breath of spring dot, and the name on. The land was Thatcher, and for the first time in years, it meant something whole.